Hi guys, this is Jen Curtis, pre and postnatal fitness specialist, and today I want to talk about 6 strategies for training with prolapse. Now I just want to say to start off with that I am a trainer, I'm not a pelvic floor physio, and that it's really important if you do have prolapse to see a pelvic floor specialist. Maybe you've only been given kind of a diagnosis from your doctor, from your gynecologist. So it's really important to get some one-on-one treatment with a pelvic floor physio. They have an amazing toolkit and they can really help manage your symptoms and manage your problems and improve your condition. I've seen a lot of women who haven't done that and who have only seen their doctor, and they often get told to just go down the surgical route, and there are a lot of other less invasive things that you can try first of all. So you should be seeing a pelvic floor physio, which means what's my role as a trainer? My role as a trainer certainly isn't to treat your prolapse or try to kind of fix your prolapse. I should be working alongside a pelvic floor physio, and all trainers that want to work with mums, women who've had children, women who do have conditions like this should be working with a pelvic floor physio as well. But there does come a point where if you do have pelvic organ prolapse, you're going to want to get back into exercise, and as trainers we need to know, we need to have a big toolbox for managing your symptoms, for improving your symptoms. There are things that we can do from kind of the outside without internal assessment and without internal treatment to help improve the condition. And there's certainly things that we need to be mindful of when we're working with women with prolapse, and there are some things that can be really helpful. So give these things a go and see if it helps you. So the first thing that I would suggest is taking a look at your breathing. Breathing mechanics are so important. I've talked about breathing in quite a lot of my posts and videos, and breathing is really the foundation of everything I do with every single client. We really need to be looking at breathing mechanics first. That's the first function of the core, and we want to ensure that your breathing mechanics are correct and are useful for doing what they're supposed to do and are not creating any problems, because quite often something can go wrong at the level of breathing, and this can have a knock-on effect and cause other issues down the line. So ultimately, and we want a bit of a focus on the diaphragm. We want to ensure that as you breathe in, the diaphragm contracts and descends, pushing your abdominal organs south. Your pelvic floor will also descend. Your abdominal, all of your abdomen will expand. And on the out breath, all of this will recoil back up. Some things that I see really often is that is initially that paradoxical breathing, where we breathe up into the chest and suck the tummy in, or something that a lot of physios and trainers aren't checking for is the function of the diaphragm. And quite often, the diaphragm descends really nicely on the in-breath, but then as they breathe out, they press down with their diaphragm rather than allowing their diaphragm relax, and there can be a lot of things going on at the level of the diaphragm that can affect the pelvic floor, and if the diaphragm is in this kind of hyper or this overactive state where we're kind of locking our diaphragm, this can be increasing intra-abdominal pressure a lot and putting a lot of pressure down on the pelvic floor and on the pelvic organs. So we really want to look at the diaphragm, check that it's relaxing and going back up into the rib cage as it should, in order to release intra-abdominal pressure and allow a proper out breath and allow the pelvic floor to rise back up, and allow and not put loads and loads of pressure down on pelvic organs. So that's the first part of breathing, is just checking that you've got proper breathing mechanics, and that intra-abdominal pressure is being regulated through proper breathing mechanics. And this is often left out. And the second part of breathing is breathing through movement. So whether you're lifting something up, lifting up your baby, getting out of the car, or if you're exercising, you want to exhale on the effort, and this allows you to release intra-abdominal pressure and ensure that there isn't tons of pressure down on your pelvic organs. Now, a couple of things with that is that if we have any compensations or any imbalances in the breath early on from just the breathing mechanism, then the chances is that that's going to be showing up when we're exercising or when we're going about our daily life. So that's why it's so important to check breathing mechanics first of all. Then the other thing is that breath holding isn't the end of the world. When it comes to lifting weights and things like that, you may come from CrossFit or powerlifting and you want to get back into strength training, and you want to get back into lifting relatively heavy, and you need to hold your breath for that. That is something that you can do later down the line. You just may need to build in some strategies first of all. That's an entirely different video though. The second tip or the second strategy is to introduce supine exercises wherever you can, or to alternate between supine exercises and upright positions. So when we're supine, which means lying on our back, intra-abdominal pressure is lower, and gravity is pulling all of our organs down towards our back. Whereas when we're upright, gravity's pulling our organs down onto our pelvic floor, and the pelvic floor has to support those pelvic organs. A prolapse isn't all about the pelvic floor; it's about the ligaments holding the pelvic organs up. But these are also under less strain when we're supine. So just the most simple way of doing this is just by throwing some glute bridges in after a more demanding upright exercise. So for example, you might have just finished a set of kettlebell swings, and you can lie on your back and do a set of glute bridges. This actually takes your pelvic floor into a almost inverted position, and can just relieve some of the pressure off of the pelvic floor. Again, we can do glute bridges with bad breathing mechanics and be pushing down towards the pelvic floor. It's less likely, but again, it's another reason why we need to ensure that breathing mechanics are good and are helpful right at the beginning of this process. But in general, taking your weight off of the pelvic floor, getting yourself on your back can be a useful strategy. Likewise, things like a floor press or a bench press can also be really useful, or some gentle core exercises since you're lying on your back. The third strategy is similar to the second, and that's inversions. So if you can do handstands, if you can do headstands, these are a great way of of releasing pressure off the pelvic floor, really similar to being supine, but it's kind of the next level of that. It really, so you can throw it into a kind of a set. So let's say you've just done a set of squats and a set of shoulder press, then you can go into a kind of inverted position, and really let your pelvic floor relax and let all of the weight come off your pelvic floor. So both of these kind of strategies we can throw into sets, and we can throw into circuits, and as trainers we should be mindful of that if we program a squat, we might then want to program something that's lying on our back or on our side, or on all fours, something that takes us out of that position, that reduces intra-abdominal pressure and reduces weight down on the floor. So we can alternate between those or throw those into a circuit. It can be quite easy to find ways of doing that. Now, if you're not comfortable getting upside down and being on your hands or being on your head, what you can do is lie on your back and scoot your bum up close to a wall, and put your feet on the wall, and then push your feet into the floor and hinge your hips up. And this takes you into that kind of downward position, that inverted position. So that can also be a useful thing to do if you don't want to get completely upside down, or if you're not confident totally upside down. The fourth strategy is to do unilateral exercises wherever you can. For example, rather than me pressing a barbell overhead, let's say I'm using a 15 kilo barbell. All of that, the weight of those 15 kilos are on my core and on that system. And intra-abdominal pressure is increased. More load, more weight, intra-abdominal pressure increases. If I split that up and I do a 7.5 kilo dumbbell press with one hand, and then switch it up and do a 7.5 kilo dumbbell press on the other side, I still work each shoulder more or less the same way, and you may need to adjust. It may not be exactly half, but you may need to adjust the weight, but you don't have that entire 15 kilos on your system the whole time. So you're just breaking up the load, and breaking up how much load is on the pelvic floor and on the core system at any one time. It's just one way of going about it. The fifth strategy is to kind of be flexible and be creative with the kind of movements that you do. And what I mean by this is that if you notice that something makes you symptomatic, we may need to do some other work to build you back into that movement. So a really good example is running. So a lot of women get really symptomatic when they run, and it may be that you need to not run for a little while and work on other things. You may need to address faulty breathing mechanics. You may need to work up into a run. You may need to do another form of cardio before you can kind of successfully and non-symptomatically get back into running. Another example is I've had a few trainees who feel very symptomatic in a squat. That getting down low in a squat, being on both feet, can make them can create this like kind of heavy feeling in the vagina, in the pelvic floor, and it kind of just aggravates their symptoms. So what I can do as a trainer is, I can have a bigger toolbox of ways of making her stronger, rather than being really sort of single-minded with like, no, you have to do squats are super duper important. There are other options. So a Bulgarian split squat can be, I mean, we can go back even like simpler than that. It's just a split, squat, just a lunge, and that doesn't create the same stretch on the pelvic floor that a squat does. And so, but it still works the same muscles. It still is a quad dominant exercise. It still works the glutes, the quads, the hamstrings. It still works all of that. What you won't get from that is as much work on the back and the multifidus, the erector spinae, and all of the back muscles, the more superficial back muscles as well. But we can compensate that with other movements like a deadlift or a Romanian deadlift and kettlebell swing and things like that. So I can play around with different movements that work similar muscle groups or the same muscle group, like a lunge, like a Bulgarian split squat would work the same things as the squat, and eventually working our way up into a pistol, and working on a single leg squat down to a chair, and then lowering, like increasing that range of motion. And the advantage of this is also that it's unilateral. So if you do want to add weight to the movement, you'd probably only have to add half as much weight, half as much load to the movement as you would with a barbell back squat, for example. The other thing is that it can help sort out hip instability, and help you fix that, which can feed into the pelvic floor. And I'm absolutely not saying like you shouldn't do squats, or if squats are bad for prolapse or running's bad for prolapse. And I'm not saying that if it makes you symptomatic you shouldn't do it, or you should never do it again. What I'm saying is that you, as a trainer, if you were in front of me and you were telling me squats make me symptomatic, I would want to try other things, see if that doesn't make you symptomatic, see if it shows up any other weaknesses, and then work with you on that for a while until we get you back into squats or whatever movement it is that you enjoy and want to do. Finally, we can do a lot to work on the glutes as trainers. We can, there are just so many sort of specific glute exercises, and glutes really help support the pelvic floor. Having strong glutes helps support the pelvic floor, helps support the back, and it's something that we can so easily do as trainers. And I try to really encourage trainers on my courses and trainees to move away from core exercises and do more glute exercises. That will give them a lot more bang for their buck. And there's a ton of different exercises that we can do for glutes. I'm going to make a separate video on the kind of different ways we can work the glutes and the best way of working and building the glutes. But if you want a really comprehensive look at that, you should check out Brett Contreras, who is like the glute guy, who's literally the glute guy, and has tons of resources on glute development from the position of a trainer. So I really encourage you to check that out, and to do little glute circuits rather than doing your kind of ab circuits after working out, which probably won't do much. So that was kind of 6 strategies that we can incorporate into training to help manage prolapse or even improve prolapse. There are many, many more, and there's a lot more that we can do, but these are just some things that I found work for most people most of the time, and can really help in the process of managing and understanding your prolapse. So I hope this was helpful. If it was, give me a like, subscribe for other videos like this, and if you know anyone who has prolapse and wants to get back into exercise, send her this video, and to see, you know, she might pick up a few things that help her manage her symptoms while getting fit and staying fit, which is obviously really important as well. So thanks for watching.